Personal protective clothing and equipment, PPE. Personal protective equipment, PPE, is the name given to clothing and devices that minimize your exposure to chemicals. The label information for each product lists the minimum specific PPE required for using that specific pesticide. This is determined by toxicity of the pesticide being used and the formulation, liquid, granular, wettable powder, etc. Legislation requires pesticide users to follow all instructions on the product label, including wearing the appropriate PPE before mixing, loading, or applying any pesticide. The higher the risk of exposure, the more extensive the PPE requirements will be. Comply fully with the advised requirements at all times. If a pesticide does not indicate specific PPE requirements, that label does not comply with legislation, and you are advised to contact the product vendor and request the full label. If there is a risk of exposure to pesticides by splashing or drift, protection for your head is advisable, and in some cases is specifically required. Labels that specify the use of headgear are generally found on highly toxic liquid concentrates. In general, a wide-brimmed rain hat, a chemical-resistant hood, or a plastic hard hat with a plastic sweatband and a rain trough edge that can easily be cleaned and keep pesticides away from the head, face, and neck is adequate. Do not wear baseball caps, fabric hats, straw hats, or hats with leather or cloth inner bands, as these will absorb and retain pesticides. Wear long-sleeved overalls over the full-length pants and long-sleeved shirts. Make sure the overalls are enclosed at the neckline and wrists. Wear waterproof clothing if you might get splashed or soaked through during pesticide application. Remove your overalls as soon as you have finished your pesticide activities. Remove them immediately if they become wet through with pesticide. Overalls should be kept separately and away from chemicals, and when traveling in the cab rather in the back where the chemicals are packed. It is always advisable to have a second pair of overalls in one's vehicle. Overalls must never be washed with other clothing. You should wear a waterproof apron when you pour and mix concentrated pesticides to protect yourself from splashes. If you are wearing a waterproof spray suit, it will not be necessary to wear an apron. Sandals, flip-flops, and cloth or canvas shoes will expose your feet to liquid pesticides and should therefore not be used when mixing, loading, or applying pesticides. Boots made of leather or fabric may be suitable while using some pesticides. However, leather will absorb liquids, and it is therefore recommended that you wear chemical-resistant footwear and socks while working with highly toxic pesticides, and when there may be prolonged exposure to any pesticide spray. Wear your pant legs outside of your boots so the pesticide doesn't run into your boots. Wash the outside of your boots after each use. Protecting your hands. Protecting your hands and arms with chemical-resistant gloves and a long-sleeved shirt can significantly reduce pesticide exposure during mixing, loading, and application. Safety specialists, however, recommend that applicators should wear chemical-resistant gloves routinely. Remember to adjust your gloves according to the task. When spraying overhead, gloves should be folded with a cuff or extended over long sleeves so the pesticide cannot be funneled into the gloves. Conversely, spraying downward requires long sleeves to extend over the gloves to prevent the pesticide from being channeled into the gloves. Glove selection tips. Glove materials must resist the pesticide's active ingredient and its solvents. Gloves should be thick enough to afford protection during the total time required for completion of the task at hand. Gloves should allow adequate grip so that applicators can safely carry out their jobs. For example, when changing nozzles and screens. Gloves should be comfortable. The right fit makes all the difference. Gloves must be long enough to protect hands and arms from chemical splashes. Gloves must be unlined. Protecting your eyes. Pesticides in contact with the eye can cause a wide range of symptoms, from slight irritation to blindness, and no pesticide to eye contact should be considered minor. Selecting safety equipment to prevent eye exposure to pesticides requires an understanding of the potential sources of exposure. The product formulation determines the probability of exposure. For example, dust escaping from bagged products, mists from air blasters or fogging sprays, and accidental liquid splashes. There are 3 types of eye protection equipment, excluding the full face respirator, designed to provide eye protection from airborne particles or chemical splashes. Safety spectacles, goggles, goggles, and face shields. Selection tips. Personal spectacles, goggles, and face shields should be assigned and fitted to each employee. This equipment should not be shared. Eye protection equipment should permit peripheral side vision. When purchasing eye protection, make sure it complies with the standard for occupational eye and face protection. Do not wear goggles with cloth or foam headbands. Do not wear contact lenses when handling pesticides, as they are permeable to vapors and gases. Protecting your respiratory system. Inhaling a pesticide can cause many different health problems. A respirator is a device used to keep pesticides out of the lungs. Respirators work in one of two ways. They either purify the air or supply clean air. Wear a good quality respirator to protect yourself from the risks of pesticides entering the respiratory system. Air purifying respirators filter the air you breathe. The air supplying respirators provide you with clean fresh air from the outside, either through a pressurized air tank, often carried on the user's back, or through an air hose. Wear a respiratory protective device if there is any risk of inhaling pesticide vapors or fumes, especially if the label states, "Do not breathe vapors or spray mists," or "harmful or fatal if inhaled." How to choose the right type of respirator. There are several types of respiratory devices. Each is useful for certain activities. Make sure you use the correct one. Always read and follow instructions on the product label. The label will specify the type of respirator for a given pesticide and task. Understanding each of the respirator's uses and limitations is the first step in selecting the right respirator for the job. Respirator types: half mask and full face. Read the respirator label to make sure it is suitable for the task at hand. Respirator fit check. A fit check must be performed according to the following steps to make sure the respirator works. Put on the respirator and tighten all straps. For a positive pressure fit check, cover the exhalation valve, the single opening near the chin area of the respirator, with the palm of the hand and exhale. Blow into the mask for 5 to 10 seconds. This causes pressure within the mask to increase, causing a slight bulging of the facepiece if fitted properly. If there is a leak, you will feel it. For a negative pressure fit check, block the filter inlets. Some models have one inlet, others have two. With the palm of the hand and inhale for 5 to 10 seconds, causing a slight collapse of the facepiece. A good seal is indicated when the facepiece remains slightly bulging, positive pressure, or slightly collapsed, negative pressure, during the fit check. An unsatisfactory seal indicates that air is moving through openings between the respirator and the face, requiring that a second positive and negative pressure fit check must be performed. A different size or brand of respirator may be needed. It is better to be safe than sorry. Always wear more PPE than required.